Hello and welcome to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines Postgame Show. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined as always by former FSU offensive lineman and college football coach Mark Salva, and with Osceola football and recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. Guys, another Saturday, same result for the most part. Saw a lot of the same things as Florida State finishes its 2024 football season with a 2-10 record after falling to Florida 31-11 on Saturday night. We saw if you're just finishing up the game, there were some interesting shenanigans after the final whistle when Florida planted their flag at midfield, and Mike Norvell went and took it down, and he and Billy Napier exchanged some words. And although I don't think Billy had anything to do with the flag planting, but anyway, it was interesting. But guys, listen, same thing we've always seen. We can go back to the Georgia Tech game. Defense plays well at times, but can't stop the inside zone with the pistol. We've seen that going back to game one. Florida State cannot block a soul. 9 sacks on the night for the Gators. 15, I believe, tackles for losses on the night. Played behind the line of scrimmage all night. I guess, guys, as much as I love football, I'm glad the season's over. Just y'all's take on the game, and we got a lot of other things to talk about besides this football team, because we got some exciting news, some potential exciting news about the coaching staff. But let's talk about the game first, Mark. Listen, this has been a long season. You and I started doing this on Sunday nights back in 2019 when Jerry bought the Osceola back, and we were just a little mom and pop operation, not affiliated with a recruiting service, and we did these things every Sunday night podcast version. This has been about as frustrating as that season. How glad are you that it's over, and what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm fine. I can't take it anymore. I'm so glad it's over. It's funny. You guys texted me about the game and, said upset alert. And I'm thinking to myself, unless this offensive line turns into the 95 Cowboys,
Yep,
there's no way. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, right? And it's just the same thing that we've seen all year. Just the inability to do the basics, turnovers, negative plays,
5 turnovers.
5 turnovers. I mean, and the worst turnover. I mean, the muff punt, the turnover inside the 5-yard line. They're all bad. They're all bad. And you just kind of knew it was coming. Yeah, that's the thing. You knew, the defense would do okay at times, and honestly, I think, if the offense had a pulse, they probably could have, played the whole game pretty. We had a chance, honestly. After that last fumble, I think the defense just like, what's the use? Not intentionally, but the air just comes out of the balloon totally. There's complementary football where one feeds off the other, whether it's special teams or offense on defense. It happens the other way too, right?
Right.
If the defense is fighting their tail off and they're getting some results, they go 3 and out, to start the half, and 3 and out to start the game, 2 in a row, and all of that. And then, but just the bad mistakes on offense. I mean, it just wears on you, and the air comes out of the balloon defensively. I mean, you can't really blame those guys for, just being a step in the wrong spot, or here they're losing concentration, or whatever it is that happens when they start gashing us. But it's just, you go into the game just hoping it's not 50-0.
Right.
I'm halfway relieved it was 31-11, and really it was 24-11 at one point, right? I mean, I was halfway. I was like, wow, it could have been a heck of a lot worse. We've gotten beat worse by this group before, and it's just a bad place to be. And am I glad it's over? Yeah, I mean, it's been 12, 13 Saturdays of just pulling my hair out, and I'm glad it's over. Luke, honestly, I said it was the first time saying, okay, there's something to work with here. he's still not. He's nowhere near ready. I mean, the timing on the passing game is terrible, and a lot of that has to do with the coordination of everything. I get that. His pocket presence is awful. There were times where if he just held his water a little bit, stood in there and delivered a ball on time, he might have, but there may have been nobody to go to because you can't see anything on the TV copy. But he is a gutty. He's a competitor.
Yep.
He's got a decent arm. It's erratic, but he's got good velocity on the ball. He's got to learn to change speeds on his pitches a little bit, but and place the ball better and all that stuff. But he's just not ready. I mean, he's a freshman. What do you expect, right?
Well, yeah.
But I think for the first time I sat there and I said, you know what? I think I kind of see it with him a little bit. He is a competitive joker, and that's a starting spot for sure.
Well, listen.
But, just overall, I'm just
I thought it looked like two freshman quarterbacks, and I guess my only takeaway with Luke, even though obviously 15 to 28 for 140, nothing impressive. Half the time he was laying on his back, he was credited with 21 rushes, if you can believe that. That's mostly to do with 9 freaking sacks. But listen, I guess the only thing I took away from Luke's performance, if you relative to the competition he faced against Charleston Southern, and he compared against the competition he faced today, I thought he might have made a little ground. Might have been some. I thought because he played about the same, right, numbers wise. But I thought so. I agree with you guys. I don't think he's ready. I think they'll go get a portal quarterback. I'm convinced of that after tonight. But I do think he made a. I think he took a step just because of the reps he got and the beating he took. You got to hope that this will serve him well down the road. Fish, I know that obviously you were texting during the game. I know you were a little bit frustrated at what you saw on offense and from Luke. Tell us a little bit about it.
First off, the frustrating thing is, you take Michigan today and they played Ohio State. They've had a terrible offense all year. 42 rushes, 172 yards. That takes a lot of pressure off a young quarterback if you could run the ball. FSU can't run the ball. But there's nothing I saw from Luke today that makes me think he could play next year. I'm sorry. This kid is nowhere near ready to play next year. Does not come off his first read, can't anticipate throws, struggles when there's pressure around him. His eyes are down. Listen, the problem is he makes a few plays and everybody's going to go, oh, man, did you see that play he makes? And he is athletic. He's a big kid and he has a big arm. But the tools are there. I'm not saying he can't be something in 2 years. But if FSU starts this kid next year, we're going to be talking about a new head coach at the end of next year. I'm just telling you that right now. He is nowhere ready. I mean, honestly, you go look at Rocco Beck, the kid at Iowa State. I'd be begging that kid to come because he's so far ahead of him. And you're just not going to win with a kid that's that raw. You're going to have a new offensive coordinator coming in. You have a whole new offensive line. I don't know. You better bring somebody in. If Luke's the guy you guys want to go with, hey, don't be upset when we're having these same podcasts after every game next year too.
Yeah, and speaking of Rocco Beck, if you go to theosceola.com and subscribe to the Osceola, you can get access to our portal hot board, and we do have Rocco Beck as one of the potential quarterback targets that Mike Norvell could pursue in 8 days when the portal opens. We've got 3 quarterbacks listed in addition to Thomas Castellanos, which we've heard that Florida State does have interest in. So if you're interested in learning more about what we're hearing on the portal, Fish and I have added some names over the course of the last week, and we'll have more names coming next week as we continue to learn more about who Florida State and who's got interest in Florida State. All right, Mark, I'll go back to you on Luke. Do you think that Mike's seen enough to move forward, or do you think that he's got to go in and grab somebody in the portal? And how concerned are if he does that maybe Luke decides to bolt?
There's so many things on this team that need to get better, and if we're going to start where we are and grow from here and say, okay, next year try to win 6, and then the next year, and then maybe the next 2 years after that are going to be kind of like it was the last 2 years we had 10 and 13. I mean, grow with Luke. Same kind of what you did with Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis, that 5-win season, he was raw could be, and kind of, developed him, grew into him, grew around the team. I mean, if Luke is your leader, and he is competitive, that's the thing I liked about it. I'm not saying, of course, he's not ready. Of course, his eyes drop because he's getting hammered every time, right? He's a freshman.
Yep.
He's erratic with his arm. I mean, no, he's not ready. But if you're going to grow with him and take, we've took lumps this year, we'll probably take lumps next year too, because, who knows what's going to happen in the portal, But if you're going to put this program on a trajectory on the rise and you can grow with him and he's your leader, I say go with him. If you bring in a guy, it better be a game-changing guy. You can't bring in just another dude. You can't bring in just a dude that's, that's an open quarterback deal and we're going to see who comes out. No, it better be, sure enough, top tier game-changing guy if you're going to bring a guy in, or else you're going to lose Luke.
Yep.
You guys are really worried about losing this kid? Like, honestly, I'm being dead straight. There's not a Power 4 school that will pay this kid money to go to their school, and if they do, it's bad. They're going to be wasting money. I'm not saying 2 years from now he can't be good, but this kid is not Florida State material right now. I'm sorry. It's the problem is we have lowered the standard so bad because of the quarterback play this year that if we see a guy run for 20 yards or he makes one play, we're all excited. I just think this is
all right. Fish, tell me this: do you think this guy at Iowa State is going to be better than Luke this year?
I honestly, I think you can bring.
I mean, is he a Cam Ward type? I mean, is he a guy that's going to?
They need somebody to manage the offense, get first downs, not turn the ball over, not fumble. Like, they need a game manager, because I do believe that they can fix this thing. Mike Norvell needs to win 8 games, and whatever he's got to do to get there next year to win 8 games, then they got to do it. Like, yes, Rocco Becht, Avery Johnson, these guys that are going to hit the portal, they're going to have to overspend and get a real quarterback in here, because this is you're not going to recover with Luke Kromenhoek next year. It's just not going to happen.
Well,
I don't think we're going to win 10 games next year.
I didn't say 10. I didn't say 10 games. I said they got to win 8. 6-6. Listen, if they go 6-6 with the way this staff recruits and they've recruited, then Mike will be gone at the end of next year. It's just
they're not, I don't think they'll win 8 next year.
I think they got.
I don't care who you bring in here. I don't care who you bring in here. They're not going to win 8 next year. Unless you bring in 4 or 5-star offensive linemen in a brand new defensive line, because most of these guys are going to be gone. Yeah, so you're going to have to start. You're starting from scratch, man.
But we don't know what they're going to bring in on the offensive line. Listen. As bad as you guys think the offensive line is, if you go back and watch this game, there was times Luke had plenty of time to throw, and he just sat back there and he just couldn't pull the trigger.
I said that, but he'll get better. I mean, hopefully he'll grow. He'll. All I'm saying is, if you're
Mark,
you got the guy here. You've invested in him. He's the leader of this class, and it appears that he's emerging as the leader of the team.
Well, the one thing I will say, and Fish, you said it, or Mark, you said it, they've got so many needs to fill. I don't think you can throw all your money at one position. I think
100%.
I think you got to spread it around. I think there has been a commitment made to Luke, like as Mark said. And listen, I think they'll go out and get somebody. I think it will be. I think they'll try to sell it as they're going to bring in somebody to back him up. I think that's the way it's going to be sold. I think that they probably already know that. I think that's why they went to Luke last week. I told you guys there was a reason Mike was making that decision. Mike does not. No head coach makes decisions without some kind of forethought. So I do think that they will. I don't think they're going to go out and try to replace Luke. They may bring in somebody to battle with him or come in and say, hey, we're bringing an experienced guy as a backup. But I think and listen, we don't know. We can sit here and talk about 8 wins next year, 6 wins, 2 wins, 12 wins.
I think it depends how they look.
I agree with you guys on this. I think it's going to be hard to get to 8.
Why can Pitt?
We don't even know who they're bringing back off. We don't even know if they're bringing back the best players off this roster.
Let me ask you something. How does Pitt, who is not a good program, lost way more kids out of the portal last year? How did they go from 3 wins to they're going to have a winning record this year?
Who's that?
Pitt. I just think that everybody just assumes that this is going to be the same team, all right, that they're not going to get any players out of the portal. Listen, football's year to year now. It's year to year. This is not – you cannot go and look for 2 years down the road because 2 years down the road, you're going to have a coach that's going to get fired. They got to win next year. If they don't win next year, we're going to be talking – who's the hot board of coaches? Luke, listen, I like Luke. I've seen enough of them to say 2 years from now, but they'll win 2-3 games with him next year. They're not winning more than 2, 3, 4, maybe get to 4 games.
Well, listen, I think we're going to know a little bit more about how to project the next year in about 30 days once this portal's open and closed and they've signed some kids. Listen, we don't even know who this team is bringing back. That's worth bringing back. I mean, we don't even know what the portal is going to look like, outgoing, incoming. But yeah, listen, you got Alabama, Florida, Clemson, Miami, Pitt, Virginia Tech, NC State, among others, on next year's schedule.
All right, Miami's going to have a new quarterback. NC State their quarterback's going to probably hit the portal. They're they're 5-7. Like you got to look at listen. I'm telling you, this team. We do not know what they're capable of next year. If they get good coaching, and you guys always talk about coaching and developing, and they're going to have a whole off season, why can't they make a jump to 7 wins next year?
Because recruiting and portal. I have yet to see us go out and get anybody of any consequence. We got to get guys that are less than and develop them.
Listen,
and if that's what we're going to do. We got to grow these guys. We don't recruit at the level of Georgia and Alabama.
But they don't need a recruit at that level. They need a recruit to win games in the ACC, which is a terrible conference.
Well, I agree with Mark. Why would we expect their success in the portal to be any different than the success we've seen them have on the high school level this year? So I do think there's nothing, and you're right. They may come back and they may win 7 games next year. I think that would be a hell of a turnaround, and I'm here for it. But I'm just saying, none of us know right now because we don't know how they're going to do in the portal. We don't know if their best players are coming back. I mean, I think we're going to have I think we'll have a more realistic view of it. If they go raid UCF, all right, and they add a Nigella Kelly, and they add the defensive tackle that was from Central Florida a couple years ago that starts for them. They add those 2 pieces, and then they get a left tackle, and they get a quarterback and one other player. If they get 5 difference makers out of the portal, and 3 of them are at UCF right now, all right, if you get 3 of those kids, all of a sudden you solved a lot of problems, and they're a better football team. It's just, I don't know, like to sit there and say this is going to be another sub 500 team. And they're going to be people are going to be okay with it. I just think that's unrealistic. I don't think anybody's going to be okay with a sub 500 team. I agree with you with what you said on that. I think there is a magic number, and only two or three people know what that magic number is. But I do think
it's more than how many games they win. It's what they look like.
Right.
If they look like this, then there's no chance. They could win if we won 6 games and look like this, and we blow games and fumble the ball and just. But if they're fighting and we're just we're young and it's just because. But Mark, that's a little different.
But Mark, let's be realistic. This team quit about 8 weeks ago. All right, so if you get new voices in there and you get coaches. Listen, they're going to have a lot of young guys that are going to want to step in there and play, and this team could be a lot better than they are. I stopped caring about this team about week 3. I really did. I told you guys. Listen,
if you're correct and they quit 8 weeks ago, then that's a culture problem. That's not going to change. Bring in a couple of new voices. So listen. It's a bad football team. We know that. It has been for a while, and some of that's on the players, and a lot of it's on the coaches. But I listen. If that's what they did, if they quit, then that's that. That will.
Listen.
I think that's a problem if you believe that they quit 8 weeks.
All right. Now I spoke to somebody that spoke to one of the former coaches that got fired, and the guy said that the coaches and everybody quit halfway through the season. All right. And I trust my source on this.
Well, then I'd get rid of everybody.
All right. Well, I'm just telling you.
You don't quit. You don't quit for the kind of money. You don't
well,
quit.
They did.
If you got a job, you don't quit whether you like a job or not.
They quit. If you watch this team and think they didn't quit, the difference is UF's not. Listen, I know you don't want to argue about this, but UF's not a very good football team. That team didn't quit. That's why they finished the year strong. That's not a good football team. If FSU even had a halfway decent offense, they could have played with that team all the way.
I think quit's a little strong. I think they went in to fight, and when things go bad, I think they're just mentally not tough. I think that's more what it is. I wouldn't necessarily call it quitting. I call it it's a fragile bunch with zero leadership. Is what it was. And when things started going south, there was nobody to pick up the flag and plant the flag. There was nobody to rally around. There was no hope, and I think they're just a mentally fragile team with no leadership in the coaching staff or on the players. And really that's the biggest difference between last year and this year, right? Is the lack of leadership and the lack of alphas. There's not an alpha on that team, and to me that's and they got zero from the coaching staff around that. They didn't get any help because of their inability to do some of the fundamental things. They were coached terribly. There's no doubt. I mean, they call a spade a spade. I mean, I don't like calling out coaches. I don't like calling for coaches being fired. I was a fired coach, and I did a horseshit job.
Randy's not going to be the DC, but I thought the defense actually played a lot better than they have most of the year. The defense gave them a chance.
They got gashed.
Their defense gave them a chance. I mean, they did give them a chance to stay in that game.
That's my point, though, Fish. They started out great, couple 3 and outs. They were doing good. All of a sudden, they get a muff punt right there in the 5-yard line, and they do walk it in. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Mentally fragile. That's not. I don't think that's quitting. I think that's just guys that just. And when they scored, they went so quick, right? So they ran the ball, got tackled, lined up, ran it again, and nobody set the edge. They were misaligned. You had a guy run through the B gap, and there was nobody setting the edge. Patrick Payton's in the B gap, and there's nobody on the edge. That's poor coaching, right? That's not being alert to the situation. That's not being turned on. That's a lot of things. So that's what I'm saying. It's a mentally. Where's the alpha that says no? Get lined up right. Let's get everybody. Knowing what to do in that situation, right? And to me, it's more what it was. I don't want to call it quitting. I don't think anybody was just like, well, I'm just going through the motions. I think the effort for the most part was there, but I don't think they got a lot of help from the coaches, and I just think they were mentally fragile.
Well, speaking of the coaches, we finally got some news on the coaching front, and as we talked about, I said a long time ago, this is not going to be the most obvious names. We heard a ton of names. It's never the names you hear. You can go back to just about any coaching search that's ever existed. It's never the names you're going to hear. We heard Kevin Johns and Brendan Marion and various other Chip Long and various other people associated with the OC job at Florida State. And we learned about 2 hours before the game that fixing to be former UCF head coach Gus Malzahn is expected to resign from UCF. I believe he's already resigned, if I recall correctly, and they've released an announcement, and he is expected to be named the new offensive coordinator of Florida State, and he does have a prior relationship with Mike. Mike was a GA for him at Tulsa when he was there as offensive coordinator, head coach. I can't remember whether Gus was head coach at Tulsa or not, but anyway, they have worked together. Do you guys want to share about how you feel about the hire? Listen, I think there's some good things that could come out of this because Gus is, he's a longtime head coach. He's a guy that Mike knows. Obviously, Mike trusts. He's been successful at Auburn. He started out successful at UCF. Was considered an innovator when he was a young coach coming up in the ranks. you've got a guy that Mike can lean on that has been in high pressure job before at Auburn. So he's not only will be his offensive coordinator, but a sounding board. And obviously, probably the biggest thing, Mark and Fish, is it signifies that Mike has given up control of the offense, because there's no way you get Gus Malzahn at Florida State as an OC unless he's going to run his show. So, Mark, I'll start with you. What was your reaction? What do you think about Gus Malzahn?
You saw my reaction.
Yeah, I know. Tell us about it.
Okay. So my initial reaction was this reeked of Jimbo hiring Bobby Petrino, right? It was I was not, because look, I'm not Gus's offense is not a sophisticated offense, Not that you have to be a sophisticated offense. I said it on here. It doesn't matter what you do as long as you execute and do it well. But the more I think about it, the more I think, okay, what are Mike's weaknesses right now? Well, obviously offensive line and running the football has not been great. And those are two things that Gus has consistently done really well. And, I don't, is Herb Hand coming too? If Herb Hand comes with him, I think, because you're that's the group that we played against in 2013 for the championship. Those jokers could run the ball, and those offensive lines are typically pretty physical, right? I like the way their offensive lines played. Their passing game was archaic, but if you're thinking about what are Mike's weaknesses right now, it's Mike can dial up a play. He can line up in a bunch of formations, and he can dial up a passing game, right? But where he was hurting was in the offensive line and the running game, and I think that's where Gus and Herb Hand hopefully could really, really help. And I think the two, if they can meld that system and do something, that's got a chance. Okay, but at first I was like, it's a kind of rinky-dink high school offense. It's not my favorite kind of thing. I was hoping for a little more, space age, I guess, offense. But he does run the ball. He's committed to running the ball.
Yes, he does.
And the offensive line is usually pretty physical. I think Mike can bring the other part of that, and the two together may be a good thing if they can figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, and I think I'm as excited about the potential of Herb Hand joining the staff as I am Gus, because you go back and look at Herb's, and I know he was a GA at Clemson right after we were done at South Carolina, Mark. But he was with Rich Rod at West Virginia before Big Sweat took his place from left South Florida to go to West Virginia, Greg Fry. So he was with Rich Rod, James Franklin for a while at Vandy, then at Penn State, then with Texas, Tom Herman from 20 to 20, and then it obviously had two different stints with Gus at both Auburn and now UCF. So I think that he's always had tough physical offensive lines. I think they've been in the top 5 or 10 and rush offense, even though they have not had the results at UCF that you'd like. Now, we don't know that Herb's coming, but he's always been kind of attached somewhere along the lines to Gus. But Fish, what are your thoughts when you heard it was Gus, and what do you think I know you mentioned that you thought that he might bring in Ice Jr., Tim Harris Jr. from who's his offensive coordinator. But what do you think of Gus, and what do you think of the coaches he may bring with him?
I mean, the fact is Gus fired himself this year and gave Tim Harris at some point of the season the offense at UCF. That's not a positive. I do like the fact that he will take some pressure off Mike. That was one of the big things we talked about, D coordinators. I said, the Purdue head coach, who was great as a defensive coordinator at Illinois, I thought him taking over the defensive side and being a head coach would take pressure off of Mike. I think they'll improve the run game. I think that'll help the team, and that's why I have positives. But the biggest negative is Gus has never developed a quarterback. And you guys are talking about, Luke Kromenhoek, who needs to be developed, and Gus has never proven he could do that. So that's a major negative to me. I agree with that. Then he's got to bring in a quarterback coach if he's going to be the guy.
Unless you get Castellanos.
But
Castellanos ready.
Castellanos already left Gus. Why would he come back to him?
He did?
Yeah, he was at UCF. So it's very frustrating because I thought they needed to go younger. They needed to bring in a guy that's going to recruit at a high level. I keep saying it. These guys can coach. These young coaches. I watched the guy even at Tulane the other night. I love the shifts. I love the motion. That's the way to go in college football now. The guys that have a lot of eye candy are trying to power it down everybody's throats. You're not going to I don't think kids want to play in that type of offense. I think it's going to be tough to recruit kids. But, hey, listen, Mike's getting paid $10 million a year. These decisions are going to decide his future. So,
all right, first, let me ask you this question before we move back to Gus. All right, so if it's true he's coming, we do know that FSU's had 3 of his commitments on official visits. Wide receiver Javon Boggs, Tavion Swift, the running back, and Lord knows Florida State needs a high school running back in this class, although Cromah was supposed to be on campus today. I don't know if he was or not. And then you got Tony Williams, the DB out of Miami. Those 3 guys visited Florida State. Do you think there's any chance that if it's true, we have no reason to believe that it's not true, everybody's reported it, and Mike's probably talking about it right now because I guarantee you that's the only thing he's being asked about in that press conference. Do you think there's a chance that those guys will come with Gus to Florida State?
I mean, one, I'm hoping Cromah is on campus because you want to talk about changing the running back room and being you've seen what Benson was able to do. I think Cromah has the same ability. And if you put him with the pieces that they have, I think Danzy flashed a little bit tonight, and I still think Cam Davis could be a solid running back in that group. So that'd be huge. But I brought up Swin multiple times that they should have been going after him from the beginning. I think they're going to raid UCF's whole freaking roster and also their recruiting class because personally they got better players. Like I said, Nigella Kelly. They've got, I forgot the guy's name. He was committed to Oklahoma at some point, but the kid is the starting D tackle for UCF. They got players that I wish they could bring RJ Harvey with them, but they got players that FSU can use. And then their recruiting class, they got at least 3 or 4 kids in their recruiting class. You know, the Boggs kid. They have another receiver that he's from the Isaac kid. I think he's from Tampa Bay Tech. He's kind of a slot receiver. I'd take him. They need 20 high school kids. And if they could take 5 or 6 from UCF's class, then so be it. You got to raid them.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to try to raid a lot of rosters, to be quite honest with you. And we'll see where these defensive coordinator hires and defensive coach hires they go. But yeah, listen, they need a receiver, right? You got the kid out of JUCO the other day. You flipped him from Arizona State. So if you get Boggs, you got 2. You don't have a running back right now in this class, and obviously,
Tavion Swint. I think Tavion Swint will be in their class. I think he recruited that kid. I'm sure they like him. I have a good feeling that if they want him, they could get him.
Yeah. But all right, Mark. So what do you know? I mean, obviously, offensive line coaches know a lot about each other. Let's just project and say that possibly Herb ends up on staff with Gus. What do you know about Herb?
Well, just what I see. That they a lot of pulling, a lot of outside zone. He's they're just usually a pretty physical bunch. Emphasis on the running game. Seems to know how to make adjustments on the run. A little bit of concern about the pass protection part. Because right now our blitz pickup is terrible. That has to get better. But that just what I see. Just what I've seen. With him. That part does make me a little bit excited. That the commitment to run the ball and do it with a physical offensive line. Those guys will be tougher, and that's an element that we are so missing. Is just the toughness. Just the physicalness of an offensive line, just taking charge of a game. I hadn't seen that long time. That'd be nice to see.
Yeah. And they also have a 4-star offensive lineman from Roswell, Georgia, committed to UCF, Andrew Stargill. Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate you reminding me of that. But yeah, so they've got some players that Florida State could probably use on its roster for next year. And Fish, that means that they won't finish in single digits. So you would be right. Since we've had that,
I told you they're going to hire a coach that's going to bring a bunch of kids. I just didn't think it'd be Gus. Yeah. I thought it'd be someone like Brennan Marion, but
we'll give you some time to digest that, Fish. You might feel better about it in the morning. You know, everything is. You get bad first impression and all of those things. So listen, I think it's going to be interesting. I think the next couple of days are going to be interesting. Somebody told me today that they did not feel that there were going to be a whole lot more changes to the staff on either side of the ball. There could be a couple, but that they did not anticipate David Johnson going anywhere, the running backs coach. They did not anticipate Tokar's going anywhere. So to your point, that could mean that Tim Harris, who I don't know how, if you're from around Florida, his father is a legend. His father was the longtime head coach at Booker T. Is that right, or is it Northwestern?
Yeah, he's the head coach at Booker T, and he's coached at Miami, and he's coached a couple other places. I think he was at Bethune or FAMU or one of those schools. So.
Yeah, and in fact, when Tim was in high school, he used to come up. I was at South Florida, and I think either Tim was junior, was just started his coaching career, or I know his dad was still head coach. They used to come up for our padded camp at UCF. So I've met Tim a number of times. It's been a long time ago. But yeah, so we'll start to see things fall in place. Guys, with the National Signing Day on December 4th, which is Wednesday, and portal opening on 8th, how do you think Mike will have at least everybody announced by the time the portal opens on Sunday, Fish?
I feel pretty confident that you'll see I think the Hand offensive line coach will come with Gus. I'm sure that was part of the agreement. These coaches always like to bring at least one coach with them. I think the defensive coordinator thing, like I said, I think there's a really good shot that someone like the Purdue head coach could end up the defensive coordinator. He's going to get fired by tonight. I mean, like, they got beat 65-0 tonight. I don't see that guy lasting past this weekend. But they've got options on that side of the ball as far as hiring a good coach. Once again, they better be able to recruit. If they can't recruit, I don't care how good they are in X's and O's. They could be the best there is. They need to get guys that can bring players in and
preach.
That better be priority number one. And that's the thing with Gus. He's not. He's not one of these guys that loves recruiting. So.
Well, I don't care if the coordinator's not a great recruiter, but the guys around him, they better be able to bring guys, for sure.
But let's be honest. The guy that he's bringing, the O-line coach, is probably he's not going to come and be some elite recruiter. He'll get some nice players and stuff to Florida State, but I don't think Herb Hand's going to be pulling a 5-star O-lineman to Florida State. It's probably going to be a bunch of 3-stars.
I think that if you can recruit, that's great, and you do need a couple of recruiters on your staff. But I'm going to say this: you've said it already here tonight. This is a new era of college football. In the deep end of the pool where Florida State wants to go swim and fish, or however you want to put it, it's about acquisition. It's not about recruiting. It's about negotiation. Once you get further and further down that totem pole towards the end of your recruiting class, then, recruiting relationships are important. But if they're searching for the 5 stars and 4 stars that you're talking about, what we're seeing every day is this is more about negotiation and NIL than it is about anything else. So I think it's more important that you evaluate the right people and that you negotiate the right way. And the further you get down your recruiting board, yes, it's going to be more about recruiting. But I think there's there's a fine line. I don't think that in the NIL era, I think that you're making too much. If for the top end prospects, which we are seeing every day, whether it's the kid that just flipped from LSU to Michigan, or it's Solomon Thomas, who is here this weekend, LSU last weekend, Florida the weekend before that, that's not about recruiting.
Yeah, those are a select few. I mean, these guys are losing. These guys have been losing recruits to every other school too, including Group of 5 schools and lower end Division I schools. So it is about they do need better recruiters on this staff.
Pat, you're telling me the exodus of the recruiting class is because not if we were 10-2. You think we would have had the same exodus?
No, I think winning is the best recruiting tool that you have.
Right. So it's not just
after NIL. I'm talking about for the top tier guys. I'm talking about for the top tier guys. It's not as you got to have a good relationship with them, yes. But all I'm seeing is we're starting to see this transition from more into a business world. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. And you're gonna get a guy that has developed talent in Gus. He may not be a great recruiter to Fish's point, but my point is for the top end guys, I'm not saying recruiting doesn't matter. I'm just saying that if you can winning sells, and winning, all kids want to win. But when we're talking, listen, I know the guy that recruited the quarterback to LSU that flipped to Michigan. I worked with him for 3 years at USF. There's not Joe Sloan. There's not a guy that worked harder in recruiting. I guarantee you he recruited that kid as hard or harder than anybody. I guarantee you he related to that kid well. And at the end of the day, what won out was money. And I think we're seeing that that's where this sport is going. And I don't see –
but that kid's not –
I don't see how you guys deny that.
That kid's not Carter Smith. Carter Smith was getting paid 70, maybe $100,000. So if Florida State can't afford $100,000 on a quarterback – then honestly, they should just drop to 1AA and play in the 1AA level, because this idea that all these schools are not all forget Ohio State, forget Michigan. There's about 5 or 6 schools that, yes, I agree, but they're in that second tier with a lot of other schools that just are not spending these millions of dollars on their recruiting classes. Not in the tens of like Florida State spent $12 million last year. If that's not enough to win a freaking gosh damn 7-8 games, then honestly, get these guys out of here, because they don't need more. They don't need more than $12 million. I guarantee
you. The right guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a value. But I'm not saying. Listen, I'm not saying you don't have to have recruiters. I'm just saying that to think that we're not moving to a different part of football. We're not. We've said it. You said it. You just said it yourself. So my point is, you've always had to have a blend of guys that can evaluate, but the NIL is changing things on the deep end of the pond. That's all I'm saying.
But let me ask you something. You really think they lost Pierre Louis, the kid from because of money? Like they lost that 3-star O lineman, an interior guy, Florida State lost him because of money? No, they lost him because they're 2-10. And the kid didn't want to come here and play for a losing team. I've
said multiple times, both on this show and one of the problems that Florida State is having is that they are losing. I've said that multiple times. I've written about it. Yes, I agree with that. I've said winning is the biggest tool that you have in your toolbox.
But I've seen guys on a 2-10 Rutgers team land 4 or 5-star kids when Greg was there.
All right, then why is Florida State not doing it?
Because they don't have good recruiters on their staff. They have
we won 13 games last year.
Yeah.
Did that translate into a top?
They didn't recruit well.
Class?
They didn't recruit well when they won 13 games. They were losing kids left and right.
100%. KJ Bolton didn't come. We were 13-0.
Forget even KJ Bolton. They have not recruited well. You go look. They recruited well in 2 or 3 portal classes. But listen, they took a kid from Albany, a kid from Western Michigan, and hit on those guys. Like the odds of them ever hitting and rolling the dice on guys like that again. I mean, I brought a guy up to Pat yesterday that I saw at Ball State, and the kid's a stud tight end. I'd go spend the money on that kid. Yeah. I mean, he's better than the two. And I think the 2 young tight ends at Florida State are really good. But here's a guy that's going to go into his senior year that is 6'7", 240 pounds. You can do those run plays. He's going to help you in the run game. I don't want to see Brian Courtney and Kyle Morlock out there anymore. Those 2 guys don't belong at Florida State, just like 54. I don't even know the kid's name, 54. He's just not very good. Like you can't.
You talking about the defensive kid?
Yeah, he can't play. You know, so
listen, I'm saying that there's just got to be a balance between recruiting and being able to coach a kid, evaluate, and be able to coach a kid up. I think we all know it takes a little bit of everything to get it done. You got to be good in all aspects to be competitive year in and year out.
If you're an elite recruiter, you get a discount, and that's what it comes down to.
Let's bring Ronnie Cottrell back.
I'm all for it. Is he still alive? I mean, let's go.
He is at a small private high school right outside of Mobile, Alabama.
I mean, I'm sure if you gave Ronnie Cottrell $12 million, he'll come back with some football players. This guy recruited back in the Dude, there's some guys that could be pretty. I mean. There's some guys that'd be pretty good with $12 million budget. All right.
I can't remember, Mark, whether Ronnie was a GA or had been elevated to. He definitely wasn't coaching a position, but he was
recruiting coordinator.
Yeah, he'd have that brick cell phone in his hand during games, and so he would walk up and find out what play Bowden had called. And he wouldn't do it until the game was over. And he'd only do it in a 40-10 game that Florida State was winning. But I stood next to him many times when he would pick up the phone and call a kid and say, "I just told Coach Biden I'm talking to you. He's fixing to call a play for you, and this is how we're going to use you. And we're going to run R46 Z reverse, and you're going to be the Z receiver. And we're going to give you the ball." And so they'd run it, and the play would go for 20 yards. And Ronnie would go, "See, you come to Florida State. This is what we're going to do with you." I mean, he would literally do that from the sideline of a game.
Oh, no. I remember in South Carolina he did that one time. I think they put a rule in you can't do that anymore.
They did.
It's because of the Ronnie Cottrell rule.
I like this guy. I need to talk to him on the phone, man.
You've never met Ronnie?
No, I never met him.
Oh,
fish.
He'd walk up to you and say, "Who are you?" And you'd start to say your name. He goes, "I know who you are. You're fit."
Yeah. Like a week ago, somebody came up to me and they're like, "Oh, Ronnie Cottrell, I want you to talk to him." I don't know who it was, but they were like, "Hey." I said,
"Yeah, Ronnie was he's an interesting character. I used to, when I first moved back to town, he was the head coach at Godby. I'd go see him all the time. And
when he was here, we had the top recruiting class about 5 years in a row.
Well, listen, he and Brad, both those guys could sell ice to an Eskimo now.
Let's get some ice.
I remember when Dad decided to take the job at South Carolina and follow Brad up there, and you'd already gone up there, and so we're up there for Shane's official visit, and Brad walks over to me and he goes, "Well, I understand you're the only one in the family that's got a problem with your dad coming to South Carolina." I said, "Well, I'm not fired up about it." He spent about an hour talking to me, and I felt much better about it after an hour. So anyway, it's funny, but you're right. I mean, I guess, do you know how much I fished? Now, I've been around Herb Hand when he was recruiting. How do you feel about him as a recruiter if he were to end up on staff?
No, I mean, I think he'll be fine. With him, I just look at his history of what he's done. I put his name out there last week as one of the coaches that they may hire, and then you go look at the list of guys that he's developed that have gone on to the NFL. It's an impressive list. So, I mean, and I don't want to offend Mark, but O-line guys are just different, man. You know, like I let them pick their own groceries.
That's a compliment.
I let them pick their own. Like I used to love talking to Trickett. I knew people didn't like him, but I always enjoyed talking to him and like finding them the Brian Storks and finding them the Josue Matias's, because the one thing is the old line coaches don't have egos. You're like, "Hey, check this guy out," and they're willing to check out any guy you put in front of them. So I've always got along with the O-line coaches, and they're just, like I said, the guy, I'm not worried about him recruiting because I know the O-line, he's going to improve it. It can't be any worse. Like that O-line will at least move up 30 spots next year with this guy, because I know he's better than what just left. So
he's got a successful track record. There's no doubt about that. So so it's been a long time since I've seen Coach Hand, but I did in the last couple of times I was around him. I think the last time I saw him was at a high school football game, to be quite honest, in Jacksonville about 10 years ago. But listen, we'll see how it pans out. But yeah, we're getting some movement on that front. Fish, are you hearing any more names on the defensive coordinator? And did Randy help his case? Because we have listed him as on the Osceola hot board as a candidate for DC. And I know that's not a very popular thing to say, but we would not have said it if there was not reason to believe that he was at least being considered in some form or fashion.
I just think Randy's going to move on. I'd be very surprised. Listen, if the team went 6-6 and then he came in but they went 2-10, you can't hire somebody that was part of the problem, whether it's his fault or not. And trust me, I think he takes way too much blame. I don't think you can sell that as, hey, we're going to hire Randy as a D coordinator.
Yeah, I agree with it.
I don't see that. I think it's very hard. Like I said, if they came out tonight and they kept Florida down to 10 points and they looked, way better than they have all year, then maybe gets a shot to talk to, But I just think you need to move. Like, they need to clean this thing up, and I think Randy would agree. You can't keep what you've this year. They need to honestly reset this whole thing and move in a different direction.
Yeah, listen, another reason I bring it up is because we have a source that's very knowledgeable, and he says that, and he's connected. He told you before that OC was going to be announced, that it was going to be announced, and he says there is a world that exists where Randy Shannon could end up being retained as the coordinator at Florida State. So that's the reason I ask. I'm not saying there's a great percentage of that. I've said myself before that I think it would be a low percentage that happens. But Mart, do you think there's anything that you saw from the defense tonight that would enhance his standing as a candidate?
I mean, the hay was in the barn. There's not a lot he could have done other than just call the game differently. I mean, there were still same issues were still evident, and he was part of that, good or bad. But look, it also comes down to who can you get,
right?
And like it or not, Randy's an ex-head coach. He's been a coach for a long time. I know Mike thinks very highly of him. If he's probably not the top target, but if his top targets are not available or can't come, then that's where he may settle for Randy.
Well, like I said, I'm just bringing it up because we have been led to believe that there is a world where that is a possibility, and because the defense did at times play well tonight, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Now, Fish, I know in the first half of the Georgia game last night, you were a big proponent of Santucci at Georgia Tech.
I still am. Like, how can you listen? That defense is the whole reason they were in that game. I mean, they shut Georgia down, and I mean, listen. Once you get into overtime, Georgia Tech ran out of. They only run 5 plays. They can only do them out of so many formations before. And I mean, you started to see, and I've got to tell you, Kirby Smart is unreal, man. Like, listen, he's watching what they come out, and then he's using the one timeout, knowing they're going to only be able to run one play, and he dials up the best play every time. Like, Kirby's unreal. Like,
I'm not sure anybody called a play on offense or defense once overtime went in that game last night, because Kirby was taking over the defensive huddle.
No, but like giving Kirby overtime and he gets one timeout and you can only call one play, dude, you're not going to win. Like, he's the best in the business. Like, it's just unbelievable to watch. Like, he literally knew which hole to go through. And like, I would take Santucci right now. Like, if you're not, he put Miami to their lowest total of points all season. He basically did whatever he wanted at Georgia last night. This guy, he was so good at Duke last year. I think that what I like is he comes from the Elko tree, Fuller was from that Elko tree, but what's good is the terminology won't switch all that much. And I think you see what he does. He makes an impact in year one at these schools. I would love for them to get Santucci. So,
all right. Well, hey, let's talk about some other. This was an interesting weekend of college football. We saw Miami go down to Syracuse, which is always fun. I got to watch the end of that game. It's good to see Mario get put in his place as he needs to be from time to time. So now you got Clemson versus SMU in the ACC title game, with Miami looking outside on the outside looking in. All right, so we know this. Whoever wins that game is in the college football playoff. So Clemson could get in as a 3-loss conference champion, not 3 losses in the conference. SMU gets in if they win. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If Clemson beats SMU, do both those teams get in the college football playoff? We know Clemson will. Will SMU get in with a loss too?
I think SMU's in the playoffs no matter what. They've had a really good season, but I personally don't see Clemson beating them. I've told you all year I haven't been impressed with them. I think they've been overhyped. I'm not a big fan of their quarterback. They lost again today. When they play teams that can score, they can't. The thing is SMU just scores so much, and I don't believe that they can score with them. You saw the one time they played a team similar to SMU was Louisville, and Louisville basically just ran them off the field. I think you're going to see the same thing next week.
All right, so if SMU wins the ball game,
Miami's in. Miami and them will be in. Miami needs SMU to win that game, and they'll both be in.
If Clemson wins, is Clemson, SMU, and Miami all get in?
It's Miami's going to have to hold on for dear life. It's
going
to
have to happen in another conference, right?
Well, I think A&M losing tonight really helped Miami out because that puts them at 4. If Georgia loses in the conference championship game, that now puts them at 3. And I don't think you can. They wouldn't have one really other than the Texas game that I just don't see 3-team. A friend of mine told me today, well, you said that last year with Florida State. I think it's going to be very hard for the committee to really give these teams that lost 3 games and lose their conference chance. Like 3 losses, I think is a lot when you're talking about making the playoff. Miami lost on the final, basically at the end of the game. So it's.
Yeah, but they won a couple at the very end too.
Oh, there's no question. Listen, there's no question, but it's when you start saying, well, you know what, this conference is better, and this is where everybody I keep saying about the SEC. Are you going to tell me at some point a 6-6 team, like what's the cutoff that we're like, listen, you're not getting in the playoffs. You didn't have a good enough season. Hey, I'm sorry you guys are in the best conference in college football, but you guys also beat each other. And honestly, if you've watched the SEC this year, there's not a dominant team. Even Texas tonight, they had the chance, Texas, to blow out A&M twice. Ewers fumbled, threw a pick and fumbled inside the 5-yard line. That conference is getting a lot of hype based on prior years. And to be honest, it's a good conference. It's always going to be good, but it's not as good. And I just think that you can't just reward these teams that lost 3-4 games. It's just I don't believe that. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see what happens.
So Big Ten,
yeah.
Oregon, Penn State in the conference championship. Is Penn State in if they lose in that championship game?
Yeah, there's going to be 4 teams from the Big Ten.
So you got Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State.
Yes, all 4 of them, yes.
All right, SEC, Texas, Georgia, Tennessee locks, right?
Texas, Tennessee, Georgia. Yeah, those are the 3 that are going to be
Any chance Alabama or South Carolina get in?
South Carolina, South Carolina season's done?
Yeah, they're done.
Yeah, I mean, they have good wins, and they don't really have bad – I don't think they have bad loss. I can't remember who South Carolina lost to. I think they lost to Alabama on the final play or at the end of the game. And, I mean, they've got impressive wins. You want to talk about a resume that's legit. They've got legit resume, South Carolina. So, I mean, but they've got 3 losses. They're the best – I think they have the best resume of the 3 lost teams to South Carolina.
All right, so Big 12, 1 team in?
Yeah, you've got whoever, Arizona State will probably be the team that comes out of that conference. I mean, BYU's playing tonight. It's probably only one, because then you'd have to have 3 lost teams from that conference. I don't see it.
Yeah.
And then Boise State will be in. Listen, I think you've got the 12 teams pretty much set. If SMU wins next week, I think you got it pretty much set. And then you've got, you got Texas and Georgia. If Georgia loses next week, I just don't see them being in either. I just think you got Tennessee, you got Texas, and oh man, you were saying there was.
I think they're getting 3 SEC teams in at the minimum. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see what happens on Tuesday night when the polls come out. We'll have a much better idea. All right, guys. Well, listen, we've been at it an hour. Just want to thank you guys for coming on, talking. We'll have more tomorrow on Gus Malzahn. I would think that we will possibly hear some more news on the coaching staff tomorrow. I don't know what Mike said in his press conference. I'm going to go watch that when we're done. Obviously, they had about 5 kids in on official visits. Nick and I will be out of the school tomorrow, hopefully to get some post-visit interviews. So hopefully we'll have some updated information from you there. We may be back with a special show tomorrow, depending on what is said and what is done in the next 24 hours. More like 18 hours, actually. And then we'll certainly be back on Monday because we do think we'll have some news by then. Early National Signing Day is on Wednesday, December 4th, and then the portal opens at midnight or 12:01 on December 8th, or 9th, excuse me. So we will have more information. No, I'm sorry, it is December 8th, on Sunday, December 8th. So we will have more information on that. You can go to theosceola.com, check out our portal board for both comers and goers. Deuce Spann has announced his intention to enter the portal and possibly leave Florida State. So we will have that. We'll have more names. I will think we'll see some guys, a lot of guys across the country declare their intentions tomorrow now that the regular season is open. Guys, have a great night. Appreciate you joining me.
Take it easy.
Mark, you got to give us a sign off there. I know you don't want to go. All right.
God damn, that was as lame as the team played tonight, man.
Right.
Come on. Dude, poor Mark, man.
It's over, Mark. No bowl show.
Mark, I feel bad. Like, honestly, for you guys that played there, I feel bad. Except that's not FSU football, man. That's not.
Hey, but we'll be back with more recruiting news and more coaching updates soon. Mark, you can come and join us on that.
You know what? I'll leave it for you guys on that.
All right. Well, hey, everybody have a good night. It was a long season. We appreciate all of you that were regulars listening to us argue, talk, whatever we were doing, oversimplifying things, overcomplicating things, whatever we were doing. And this has not been a great year, but listen, we're all blessed on a thankful week to be able to sit down and talk about football, good or bad. And I'm always appreciative of that. I'm appreciative of you guys. I always enjoy sitting around chatting and talking football, Florida State football in particular. But listen, we'll be back next year, hopefully. But you guys have a great night. If you're not a subscriber to the Osceola, please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com and check us out. And obviously subscribe to the YouTube Osceola YouTube channel while you're here. And we'll be back either tomorrow or definitely on Monday. Thanks for joining us.